couple of weeks ago, I saw a question posed online in one of the groups I look at about holstering in an encounter. It really didn't ask the question one, two, how many good guys, how many bad guys. It was simply, should we look the gun into the holster or should we not look the gun into the holster? And the divide across the internet just went crazy. I'm not certain. I don't know that I have ever read it, but I think somewhere there's an instructor book for firearms instructors that somewhere says that we can't agree with one another. There absolutely must be a divide in what we teach. Kind of like the old days when there were people that walked around and suggested that competition will get you killed. Very often we would hear instructors tell students to look the gun into the holster. And I think look sometimes is not the appropriate word. Maybe we should teach them to see the gun into the holster, to see a clear, safe path back into the holster. And I don't think that always has to be visually. I don't believe that there needs to exist a divide. This group of people should not look the gun in the holster, where this group of people should always be able to look the gun in the holster. There are not absolutes like that. We should be able to holster and look, or holster without having to look based on the condition. We should be training shooters that can think, that can problem solve. Again, I do not think there are absolutes, or we should not put our focus on any absolutes. A level 3 bucket worn outside the waistband, clearly exposed, could just as easily find obstructions that could be problematic as a concealed carry type holster, one worn inside the waistband. Seasonal changes could affect both sides, and I don't think we have to sweat the, oh, this is what you do or this is what you don't do. These are the conditions that if the gun's out of the holster, regardless of why or who has it out of the holster, it's our obligation to teach the students how they safely return that gun back to the holster. I believe that the words fast or slow do not necessarily belong in the holster conversation or the reholstering conversation. Just because we do something slow does not make it inherently safer. Just because we do something fast does not mean that is then inherently less safe. I think as a community, instructors should be teaching students. It does not matter who that student is. It doesn't matter if it's competition-based. It doesn't matter if it's a private citizen in concealed carry or a law enforcement professional. Once the guns come out of the holster, the gun needs to stay out of the holster as long as I need that firearm. When I no longer need that gun, no matter why I no longer need that gun, I need to be able to safely return it to the holster. I need to see that clear path back to the holster. I might have to feel that path clear back to the holster, but I need to safely be able to return that gun to the holster, regardless of the speed in which it might have to go. I don't need to teach them to go fast. They need to go as fast as the conditions require them, and they have to understand the safety considerations for getting that firearm back into the holsters safely. I think it's quite possible that one problem we see is there are instructors who are simply outside of their level of understanding. They don't understand the why, so they can't pass the whys on to the individual. Take your time and reholster does not necessarily mean to go slow. Make sure all the work is done. Make sure you don't need that firearm anymore. Once it's done, safely transition, having recognized what that next task actually is. In a class, I heard Tatiana Whitlock teach a 4-step process, if you will, for a post-engagement scan, in part, looking around, asking the question, who can help me? Who can hurt me? Where am I going and where are my people? And I think that's a great way to introduce the concept of slow down. Don't get in a hurry. Let's think this thing through. We're transitioning to something else so that we set the condition regardless of who's putting the gun away, that it can be put away safely. I think it is far more likely that a police officer would have to put the firearm away, potentially one-handed, potentially without looking, to go hands-on with a suspect to effect an arrest or to put handcuffs on somebody that the concealed carry holder might not have to do. But I can think of a dozen things where a concealed carry person might not be able to look the gun in the holster, might not be able to use both hands. I believe we'd be far better off if we sat back and those people, those individuals that are directly responsible for training, the law enforcement professional might need to prioritize one-handed reholstering more over the concealed carry person. Um, the the condition that we might have to do that, we might spell them out for the law enforcement guy, but we don't want to negate the value in that for the concealed carry person. Seasonal changes when there are bands around the bottom of jackets, when there are cords, um, keys that hang outside of belts, to point out those things that might be safety hazards, that might be seasonally related or professionally related, then we make it easier for them to problem solve the safe holstering process. We need to step away from these positions of willful ignorance where we think that one group is an absolute or another group doesn't have that absolute, and we need to train people to a higher standard. We need to raise our students to expect a higher standard in training.